Welcome to Aspire Johnson County's podcast, the Johnson County Business Insider, where you will hear storytelling, interviews, and roundtable discussion spotlighting the people, projects, and policies driving Johnson County, Indiana's growth. From this, you will gain insights into business, workforce, public policy, and community development all around Johnson County, Indiana. We're excited to share that the Johnson County Business Insider podcast is presented in 2026 by Citizens Bank.
This podcast is brought to you by Citizens Bank. Citizens Bank, serving South Central Indiana since 1931. Building strong communities one relationship at a time. Learn more at www.citizens-banking.com.
Today, we're tackling an issue that quietly impacts nearly every employer in Johnson County: early care and education, or what many of us simply call child care. We're going to explore why it's so difficult to operate a program and why sustainable child care directly impacts workforce participation, retention, and business stability. Thanks today also to Centier Bank for supporting today's conversation. I'm your host, Christian Maslowski, President and CEO of Aspire Johnson County, and today I am joined by three guests representing important perspectives. Dawn Underwood, the Director of Early Learning Community of Johnson County; Dr. John Shalofsky, the Director of HR with Clark Pleasant Community School Corporation, which operates on-site programs; and welcome back to the podcast, Lance Clark, Vice President of Administration and General Counsel at KYB Americas Corporation in Johnson County. Welcome to all of you, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
So tell us, Dawn, what the early learning community does. You know, you both, operate a center, and you provide training and advocacy, correct?
Exactly, yes. So we are a nonprofit, high-quality early learning childhood program that has served over 1,800 children and families over the past 15 years here in Johnson County. We serve families with children ages 3 to 5, and we help children grow into confident, capable learners. In addition to that, we also provide training to early childhood teachers and provide coaching and consulting to support our parents, along with making or helping early childhood programs grow stronger across our community.
All right. I love that. Workforce pipeline starts as early as 3 to 5. Capable, confident. Those are the kind of employees we want. John, you operate a couple of on-site programs for employees and family members in the community. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Why did you guys decide to do that?
Sure. It's a necessity. Okay, anybody who has children know how hectic it can be with that scheduling just during the regular day. So in Clark Pleasant, what we try to do is we try to help out our patrons and especially stakeholders in order to help them as much as we can with those efforts. We do have before and after school care in order to kind of meet the needs of the individual schedules, because people still need to work.
Yeah.
And we've also found that when you don't offer those opportunities, it is a hit against your retention rate, because some people find out that it might be cheaper in order to stay home instead of dealing with the child care. So affordability is very important as well. We also have a preschool program. And a lot of that's to prepare these kids for school. A lot of times you have to teach these kids how to be prepared to learn. And so we look for opportunities every single chance we get in order to see how can we help society bridge that very difficult gap that everyone faces at one time or another.
That's right. So, we all have to work, regardless of when the care ends and begins. The employers still require certain hours. So, Lance, welcome. From your perspective as a large employer, why does this topic even show up on your radar?
Well, let me first say how glad I am that both Dawn and John have the programs they have, because otherwise, as a major employer, the day we're recording this, we got some unexpected snow overnight. Schools are delayed 2 hours. I can guarantee we are going to have a lot of parents who aren't going to be there for the first couple hours. So it is critical that there are programs out there. The difficulty with our company or many other companies is just having the facility itself, the physical plant. I mean, we're a manufacturer. It's difficult to bring a 3-year-old out on an assembly line, although there are times they could probably give us some help. But but just not having the physical plant in such a way, I'm sure Dawn can talk about the regulations that you have to go through to have this kind of program. And I respect the fact that John and the school system is able to do that. But very few employers have that physical plant capability to be able to bring in children.
That's a great segue. Dawn, let's level set and kind of talk a little bit about why it is and why it could be so difficult to operate a child care program financially.
There are a lot of regulations, like Lance mentioned. It as there should be for safety of our children, but it does require the director to have a degree in early childhood, not a business degree, unfortunately, and sometimes that can be a problem, right? So operating a child care program is financially tough. It's built on people, and it's not a typical business model, right? And there are regulations that were required for safety. One of the regulations is obviously that the director has a degree in early childhood, which is important and necessary. But typically that means a teacher has worked for the program and has now been put in a director's position. So they don't have necessarily a business degree, right? And so that cash flow and managing budgets and understanding wages of teachers and what we need to pay those degree teachers, along with enrollment of children. So workforce has been a challenge here in Johnson County. And we do want to keep low teacher-child ratios. That's essential for safety and quality. So staffing is one of the biggest issues, not just here in Johnson County, but across the country. Then you add rent, the food, insurance, licensing, and the ongoing training, and that adds up. So we can't just serve more customers or more children to increase that revenue. We are limited by our space, and we can't just bring in more customers to increase that revenue. Okay. So space and safety limits cap the enrollment.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a theme, even from manufacturing to childcare. Space, regulation, labor, fixed costs. John, as someone running a program, does all this resonate? What's the hardest operational reality that you face, or maybe that you didn't expect?
A lot of it has to do with the need, because there's a great need out there and the opportunity to meet that need. You brought it up earlier that there's a limit to resources, and you do have space. Now, with our before and after school care, we do contract that out. But we have been investigating, what does it look like to do that ourselves? What does it look like to have on-site child care? We definitely have a need for that, and people do express that. A lot of that has to do with a sense of comfort for the parents. And that's something that's very, very important, is they want to have trust in any location or facility that they're putting their kids in. And that's totally understandable to me.
How does childcare instability, I want to switch gears back to the worker and the workforce. How does childcare instability show up in the workforce? How are we seeing that? Dawn, what are you seeing in terms of, demand in Johnson County? How are you hearing about workforce instability? And maybe you're seeing it yourself.
Yeah. Well, families are definitely showing up stressed, rushing late, missing work entirely because they can't find the care that they rely on. We see parents juggling impossible choices, leaving a job they need to support their family, or leaving a child without the consistency and the support that they deserve. So, and children feel it too. When they're bouncing between programs and missing the routines and the relationships that help them feel safe, this instability ripples through families, workplaces, and communities for sure. And that high-quality, stable childcare isn't a perk. It's like the foundation that parents need to be able to leave their kids in a safe, quality environment.
How do you see childcare instability in your facility?
Yeah, like I said, today's going to be a perfect example of, we have a large immigrant population that works for us from the Chin community, which they are wonderful workers. I mean, on any given day, they are very loyal, very responsible. But on a day like today, we have we run 2 shifts, and we have, parents that, one parent takes first shift, one parent takes second shift. Well, that first shift parent is, they don't have a choice. So it does create ripples, as Dawn was saying, where what we have found is that many of them have kind of joined together. So I would love to know the number of grandparent. We talk about childcare. How many grandparents these days that is now their full-time or at least part-time job is now providing that care to those grandchildren, either in their homes, unregulated sometimes, but for groups of people. People will find ways to make things happen when necessity requires.
John, you mentioned employee retention. Is this when you are looking to hire teachers and classroom assistants and administrative staff? Is childcare a part of that conversation, or do they ask about childcare?
That's a relatively common question. They'll often ask about the opportunities. Okay, I do think in Johnson County we attempt to offer a lot of opportunities. But again, you go to the impact of all of this. For example, the school corporation actually affects the business and industry, because Lance is a perfect example of today. Because we're delayed, even the before and after, is affected. And so now you've got employees who are having to call in and say, I have to do this. I have to take care of my family first. And I know that the majority of Johnson County employers are very pro-family. And so they're going to do what needs to be done. But there are a lot of variables that go in, and a lot of parents have to really be able to think on the fly and juggle their responsibilities. And we totally understand that.
Yeah. Great employability skills, right? Being able to process and problem solve and pivot. John just mentioned opportunity. And so some of his conversations are just about opportunity in general in Johnson County. Obviously, there's a demand growing for care. Is there a gap between supply and demand? What's the landscape here?
Yeah, it is changing, and that high-quality childcare demand is intense, and the gap between what families need and what's available is real and persistent. So we have enough licensed childcare spaces to meet about 2/3 of the local demand, meaning that thousands of children, they still don't have reliable care, and that figure has definitely worsened since the pandemic.
And how do you define high quality?
That's a great question. The state of Indiana has something called Paths to Quality, levels 1 through 4, 4 being the highest level. Level 1 is, does the program meet the needs to keep your child safe and healthy, right? All the way up to level 4, which is your nationally accredited program.
Okay. So
the state considers programs level 3 and level 4 high quality. The other population that is struggling really is that infant toddler care.
Yes.
It's the hardest hit. There's fewer slots compared to the number of families looking for care. And even when there are licensed slots that exist, many go unused because programs don't have enough staff. So that right now we have empty classrooms. So the demand is strong, and the gap between what parents need and the system that we can provide is very much widening.
Okay. So that kind of gets back to, employer-provided solutions. So if the system, the private centers can't keep up demand, we've talked about employer-sponsored solutions. So, John, again, you're doing before and after school care, offering preschool. What have been the biggest benefits of offering on-site care?
Okay, well, there again, you run into your employee pool, and we are a major employer in Johnson County. That quality aspect that was brought up just a second ago is so important. I will say that our preschool program is Paths to Quality. And we have been growing in order to offer more needs. We have moved from our early learning center, which was a one site, to we have begun to expand to satellite sites. So we have satellite sites at Whiteland Elementary, Pleasant Crossing Elementary, and Clark Elementary. But with those, of course, comes your search for high-quality employees in order to man them, because that's what people are looking for. Another aspect of this is what I had talked about, and with Paths to Quality, there is a curriculum. There are a set of standards in that are scientifically based on what does a child need to be school ready when they're ready for school. Mm-hmm. And that's a major goal, is not just the care, okay? It becomes what is the quality of the care and its educational purpose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Lance, you talked about the space being a major hurdle of not being able to offer something on site. Now, do you offer other benefits or solutions or support? Do you offer the dependent care FSA, the flexible spending account option? Is that being used heavily?
Not as heavily as I would have expected. I mean, we explored a couple years ago about giving vouchers, where we recognized we did not have the space, but kind of to John's point, there are other programs out there, and we were like, okay, what can we do to support those? Did not actually get the level of response that we kind of expected. We also got a little bit of negative backlash from people that don't have children. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why are you investing this time and money in this group? How about something for the rest of us? So we continue to explore. We continue to listen to our employees, try to address those concerns that they have on a very regular basis, not only about childcare, but healthcare and all the other things that they have to deal with.
That's a great question. And to be honest, I haven't seen any great or successful employer-sponsored childcare solutions that have fully solved that problem. It's a tough challenge. Mm-hmm. Their staffing, space, and costs make it incredibly complicated. I am intrigued by a model that's called TriShare. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. It's where employers, employees, and the program share the cost and the responsibility. So that tuition that would have been 100% on the parent now gets divided into 3, which makes it more affordable. And this kind of collaboration could definitely help families access quality care while keeping programs in our community sustainable. I think it's a promising idea. It started in Michigan. I see it more in northern Indiana, and it seems to be solving this challenge. It does take commitment and teamwork, but I do think that shared investment is something that we should look at.
So we've talked about cost pressures, staffing shortages, regulatory complexity, workforce, reliability. Given all that, just real quick lightning round here. One sentence: what would most improve the childcare landscape in Johnson County from that perspective?
Once again, I think that we have a lot of creative thinkers in Johnson County. And that kind of synergy and that kind of brainstorming, there have to be solutions. And I think one of the most important things that can be noted from, Dawn and Lance, that we have identified and acknowledged that there is no one-size-fits-all, and that we are dealing with an issue that we need to come up with solutions. And through those solutions, it's a lot of creativity, because people are in different places all the time. You may be dealing with a family that only has one child, whereas they have two children under the age of 5. Mm-hmm. So every person is in a very unique situation when it comes to the child care topic.
It's so true. No one size fits all. Yes. Lance?
Yeah, no, John stole my thunder. I'm from a point of view of, unique solutions. I mean, some people would say, well, let's neuter all the men and then you don't have childcare. There's probably some women would go along with that. But absent that, there has to be some cooperation, I think, between government, maybe additional tax credits, between industry with regard to vouchers, with regard to So I like the 3-way
price share,
the price share that you were talking about. So those kind of unique solutions, I think, are what needs to be explored.
Yeah, definitely. Stable childcare isn't just about kids, right? It's about the workforce, businesses, and our communities. They depended on that. So I think the biggest thing that would improve childcare in Johnson County is that sustainable funding that strengthens the early childhood workforce and keeps programs financially viable.
All right. This is all great insight. I think we're going to go ahead and leave it there. So for those listening, thank you. As we can tell, childcare isn't just a family issue. It's an economic development issue. It's a workforce issue. And increasingly, it's a business stability issue, as we've seen today when we're recording this with the 2-hour delay at school. So folks are scrambling to pivot to make it all come together and work. So Dawn, Lance, John, thank you for helping us unpack a complicated topic in such a short time. I want to again thank our sponsors for making this conversation possible. Aspire, Johnson County's Business Insider podcast, is presented in 2026 by Citizens Bank.
This podcast is brought to you by Citizens Bank. Citizens Bank, serving South Central Indiana since 1931. Building strong communities, one relationship at a time. Learn more at www.citizens-banking.com.
And today's episode sponsor is Centier Bank. That's it for this episode of the Johnson County Business Insider. I'm your host, Christian Maslowski. Join us next time.